9,000 people attended the Kenosha Theater on opening day, hailed as the castle in Spain, the playground of the North Shore, a masterpiece of a master builder. This theater went on to introduce the city to talking pictures. The second talking picture ever made, Melody of Love, premiered at the Kenosha Theater. With over 2,400 seats, the Kenosha Theater was the hub of activity in the downtown. It wasn't an unusual sight to see people lined up around the corner to see the matinees and the shows as they premiered. This most lavish interior in the entire state was one of Universal Studios' prize holdings. It was commissioned by Carl Laemmle himself, the founder of Universal Studios, because he lived in Wisconsin. So Universal Studios built one of its finest theaters at the gateway to his home state. Fully equipped with stage rigging and dressing rooms, the theater quickly became a favorite on the vaudeville and live show circuit. In those days, it was common for an army of ushers to take care of patrons and direct them to their seats. Over the years, some of the finest performers graced the stage. Harry Blackstone, the famous magician, made an elephant disappear. The Three Stooges came and did a live Hollywood review. And Gene Autry, the singing cowboy, performed on the stage of the Kenosha. Weekend matinees brought throngs of children downtown. The theater held many contests and had newsreels to keep the adults informed of what was going on around the world, especially during World War II. The theater became an important part of Kenosha's fabric. All of the big bands of the day played the Kenosha, the Mills Brothers, and even Lawrence Welk. There were stories of Lawrence Welk's orchestra drinking at Sharkey's bar behind the theater moments before they were to go on stage. But as the years went on and television entered the scene, the Kenosha Theater could no longer support the dwindling amount of patrons. So on March 18, 1963, after showing Glenn Ford and Hope Lang in Love is a Ball, the Kenosha Theater closed. Standard Theaters, the operators of both the Kenosha and the Lake Theater downtown, placed a deed restriction on the building saying that it could not be used as a theater for 25 years, thus sealing the fate of the city's most lavish and opulent interior. When we first walked into the building in 1983 and the doors went open revealing the ornate cast plaster, I couldn't believe that this building was sitting here left to decay. It was actually raining inside because the roof had so many holes. We walked through the apartment building and realized that this was the city's largest pigeon coop and that it was heading for the wrecking ball if no one did something. And you hear all the time about groups that get together to say, save this and save that. Well, we decided to put our money where our mouth was. And we formed a partnership and bought the building and renovated the apartments so at least the building would pay for itself. The partnership envisioned the restoration of the Kenosha to be the southern anchor for the three other 1920s theater auditoriums within the downtown area. They realized there was a potential for an entertainment district. But when Chrysler announced in 1988 that it would cease auto assembly and more than 5,000 people would lose their jobs, any talk of theater restoration was seen as frivolous, regardless of the argument of the economic impact it would have on an already distressed business district. But while the Kenosha Group was having little success, there was a man who was restoring movie palaces throughout the country. For 2 decades, he was demonstrating how revitalizing old theaters had a major positive economic impact on their communities.
I found in restoring them, the closer I get back to the original concept of making them really accessible and allowing the wonderment to show through and take people to a different part of their life is the magic of what they were and are still today.
Think of what some communities would be like without their major movie palace. What about Chicago without the Chicago Theater?
No one remembers how close we came to losing that magnificent edifice. I had about 2 weeks to find a tenant that could pay $800,000 a year, which then was the highest rent in the country for any theater. And then to be able to get Sinatra to open it in Chicago, and he was in an amazingly good mood. It was like a glorious experience. We had him for 5 performances, and then the very next week we had Bill Cosby, who was at the peak of his career doing 6 shows.
Ray's track record is astounding. His depth of experience is like no other, and his passion for detailed and functional restoration is only matched by his determination that these beautiful structures make sense economically. Ray has been involved with over 34 theater restorations around the country. He's been recognized throughout the industry as the restoration guru. He's the founder of Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio, the second largest grossing theater district in the country. He's even been awarded an honorary doctorate from Case Western Reserve University for his work in revitalizing theaters and communities across the nation. His is not a career that sought fame and fortune, but there is no denying that his legacy will touch millions with the grandeur of the buildings he's saved and the celebration of imagination that takes place within them. In 2003, Ray Shepherdson was hired by Waukegan to restore its historic theater. When Ray gave tours of the Genesee during restoration, it was obvious how much attention he paid to details. The performers, workers, and the customers were all considered with great care in all of his plans.
Now down here, you see the street light? That'll be open to the top of the marquee porch. All my life I've run theaters, and in most of the movie palaces we've restored, you never see this because you'll have the nice fancy seats up front, but people that have paid taxes all their lives and are now retired on a fixed income buy the cheap seats in the upper balcony, and you see these old people crawling up the back staircase. Well, here they'll be able to park within 50 feet of their seat, come in on the same level where they sit if they want to. They can sit anyplace else, but if they want the real value, and again, they'd be like at the boxes at the opera. And the back row is, at the narrowest place, is 5 feet wide. So they can sit down, and there's room to get walkers by or wheelchairs by, and it's just a really nice situation.
But it wasn't meant to be. Months before the grand opening, a decision was made to jettison the operating plan that drove the very design of the restoration. Consequently, the 7 beautiful lounges remained empty nearly 300 days a year, with no activity. This, after spending nearly $32 million. While the not-for-profit board in Kenosha certainly had reservations about Waukegan's decision, they were comforted in knowing that while the restoration was taking place in Waukegan, Ray Shepherdson had been sending his teams of designers, plaster experts, architects, and engineers down to survey, propose, and design a complete restoration of the Kenosha. The experts came up with the ingenious plan to build a new central core that would leave the building footprint the same, but allow for new lobby and revenue-generating space. The addition of a new, oversized, fast elevator would make the theater one of the most ADA-accessible venues in the country. 8 years after the opening of the Genesee Theater, the Kenosha Theater still remains dormant, although Kenosha has made great strides in its lakefront development. The area where the auto factory once stood and the marina are now developed. Condominiums line the harbor where longshoremen once worked. The lakefront has become a recreational destination with the addition of 2 new museums. And while all of this development was underway, the Kenosha Theater not-for-profit was able to get a community development block grant to replace the deteriorated roof, the process of which damaged more plaster than all of the years of water damage, but stabilized the structure for future development. The 2008 real estate crash has given the rare opportunity to purchase the land just south of the building to accommodate any parking needs performances would create.
One thing that's always important is parking. And what you've got to do when you're trying to develop a neighborhood, the idea of doing parking for a theater also puts the parking there for future economic development and daytime activity. And the neat thing about it is if you have a parking garage near a theater, the theater traffic will actually pay for the parking structure so it can be free in the daytime, which really helps economic development. It's just another little plus you get from doing a spectacular movie palace.
This lot also has the fortunate advantage of being located conveniently to serve the events that take place on Library Square, like the Museum Art Fair, or the bike races, or the new events that could take place under the shadow of the Daniel Burnham design, historic Gilbert M. Simmons Library. The fortunate location of this available parcel also makes it an important southern parking anchor for any events that would block off downtown's main street. The theater project has faced many skeptics along the way, but in 2009, the Americans for the Arts did a major economic study on the impact of the not-for-profit arts and cultural sector in the state, showing that over 15,000 jobs alone were created in the state by that sector. Those jobs alone paid wages of over $250 million to residents of the state of Wisconsin, generating nearly $500 million of economic activity in the state. Armed with these findings, the Kenosha Theater Project and the University of Wisconsin Parkside Market Research Group undertook a major study to test the business plan and the potential economic impact of a restored Kenosha Theater.
This is the most exciting market research project that we've done in my market research classes in the 4.5 years that I've been at UW Parkside. We've done about 50 community projects. This was the only one that extended over 2 semesters. We had 6 undergraduate and graduate students that were passionate about the project, and they actively went out and sought over 500 responses from the community. A demographically representative sample. We asked in-depth questions about entertainment preferences and habits, the acts that they wanted to see, their spending habits, how often they went to the theater, where they went, what they spent, how far they drove, and we have a profile, an in-depth profile of what the community wants by zip code in this region.
The study showed that in the last year, more than 750,000 people in our trade area attended a live performance, and the economic impact on the area alone from theatergoers on dinners and drinks would be over $7 to $10 million annually. The study also showed that skeptics are actually rare. 86% believe in a downtown theater.
And the fact that Kenosha has hung on to their theater that's been closed since 1962, longer than I've been in this business, tenacity really does pay off. And hanging in there and hanging on to the hope and allowing things to evolve and waiting until the right moment to put it all together. And I think in Kenosha's case, it can really be the cherry on top of a really nice sundae in that you've already done so many wonderful things in Kenosha. Now you need to create some vitality, and this is a perfect opportunity to do that. And with the downturn in the economy, doing something that everybody can afford to participate in is really a great idea.
So many people ask, how do you run a restored Kenosha Theater? The least effective way to run a theater, any theater, is with one-night stands and just one show at a time. So each show is a gamble. It's either win, lose, or draw for every show. Each show is like starting up a mini business. It is also the most expensive way to present a show for both the theater and the attraction. The least effective way to run a theater that does one show at a time is to do it as a rental house. To understand why, one needs to look at the concert industry as it exists today. Live Nation is currently the dominant force in the industry. They point out that promoter profit is disappearing. The money they earn today comes almost exclusively from ancillary income, parking, box offices, concessions, advertising, and sponsorships. So the only way a one-night stand theater gets a show is if some promoter thinks he or she can make a profit. So they rent the theater and roll the dice. A theater operating like this will be lucky to do 50 or 60 shows a year. For a perfect example of what not to do, all we need do is look south to the Genesee Theater. So what is the alternative? If the goal is to present 248 performances a year, it would be obvious there is no way an operator will come close to meeting that goal by doing one show at a time. 248 different attractions just doesn't make any sense. So one needs to consider the standard 8-performance week, which means instead of 248 different attractions, an operator can achieve their goal with only 31 different attractions, still leaving 21 weeks available for community activity. The 8-performance week is standard in the Broadway and legitimate theater industries and has been for years. There are jazz houses that do even more. As an example, the Blue Note in New York schedules 12 shows a week on a regular basis for each performer. The next question is marketing. How do you market 8 performances a week and create a regular theater-going public? It is important to look at how sports and arts marketing is being done across the nation. What does every sports team, Broadway presenter, legitimate theater, symphony orchestra, ballet, and opera company have in common? They all have season tickets or subscriptions. None of them sell just one game or performance at a time, nor could they and have any hope of staying in business. The marketing approach that makes the most sense and is the least risky is what we like to call talent-based programming, value-driven marketing. We create an anchor use base of 240 performances in the form of 5 6-week seasons. Each season consists of 6 different shows of as wide a variety of attractions as possible. We focus the season to be as attractive as possible to the over 50 demographic.
We've gotten older now as a country and as a world population, and people over 50 are my target because they're completely underserved. They're not the kind of folks that want to go to a concert. They want to get out of the house and have a good time and not spend a fortune. They want to see a show. It's not a concert mentality.
Well, the study showed that there's a variety of interest in a variety of acts. That variety is what's going to keep people interested and engaged, particularly in the target market of over 50s that Ray Shepherdson's recognized. I think the subscription plan does that. I think there's a ready market, particularly in that over 50 age group, that's looking for activities. They're going to Milwaukee, they're going to Chicago to the theater, they're taking that money outside the region. And I believe if they have something in close proximity here that gives them the same entertainment opportunities that they're now driving 25 or 50 miles for, that this plan is going to be a winner.
Nothing is more compelling than the perception of exceptional value. The goal is to keep our marketing simple and easy to promote. We do this by creating an extreme offer. We price all of our tickets at under $35, and we develop 3 offers. Buy 3 shows, get 3 shows free for under $100, which is under $17 per show, for shows that are currently selling in excess of $60 to $75. The second offer is buy 2 shows and get 4 shows free for under $70, which is under $12 a ticket. Again, for shows currently selling in excess of $60 to $75. With a third similar extreme offer, the variety seasons are repeated 3 times to fill out the year's schedule.
And it's all in the numbers. And when you structure selling a package where you're selling a 6-show season and you have $1 million a season to spend on the attraction, you can virtually buy 90 to 95% of all the attractions that are available in the country.
2 points are worth noting. Number 1, most working attractions will do 8 shows in 1 week for what they would normally get for 2 to 4 one-night stands. And number 2, most quality attractions can sell 2 to 6 times as many single tickets for 8 performances as they would for a one-night stand. In this way, we are using the attractions to create a going concern. We get rid of Ticketmaster and run our own box office. We also run our own concessions, with an average income of $3 to $5 per person in concessions generated from the facility's 4 lounges. And because the theater is now a going concern, it is easy to generate a significant amount of revenue from sponsorships, advertising, and development. It's all quite simple when one breaks down the operation into reasonable, doable pieces.
My favorite offer is buy 3 shows, get 3 shows free. And when you structure a 6-show season and people are only paying for 3 of them, it's such an amazing value. It makes it almost irresistible. And it allows people to try new things. And it's amazing when people look at a 6-show season and you have a chance to embellish what each individual act is doing, everybody finds a different three, which is pretty amazing. And it's just, that's what we've learned from doing this a lot, that the buy three, get three free, the exceptional, compelling, extreme offer is just magical.
The one thing that I agree, I think is a little bit different about Kenosha than some of the markets that Ray has developed these theaters in, particularly in this economy. We know, based on the study and my knowledge of the community, that people are looking for value here. And the subscription model that's been developed really addresses that. So I think that's why it's going to be successful. National studies show that if you have a subscription model versus a one-night stand type of model, that you're going to generate 2 to 6 times the traffic in the downtown core.
I've been restoring historic theaters and operating them now for a little over 40 years. And one of the few things nice about being old is I've had the opportunity to make my mistakes on other people's dollars. So after having such a wide range of experiences, I can tailor the experience to Kenosha and look at what can be done with this magnificent theater in the context of where it is and the opportunities that exist today. We were able to experiment and do things that weren't normally done in a couple dozen different cities, and that gives us a huge leg up on people that have just never done this before.
I became very engaged in this project because I saw firsthand 17 years ago that the impact that a similar project can have by effectively renovating one of these treasured atmospheric theaters. My late parents were involved in a committee to renovate a similar theater in Canada just outside of Toronto, very similar market to Kenosha. I saw the changes there over 15 or 20 years once the theater was open, and how it became a destination, how it rejuvenated the downtown, how restaurants opened, how spas opened, and how this sleepy little kind of Rust Belt town was transformed into one of the major weekend destinations in southern Ontario.
The thing that I find kind of exciting about the Kenosha project is that no matter how much a project costs, it always contributes significantly more than whatever it costs when it's operated properly and it's organized and presented in a way that makes the most sense and can have the highest impact. And what I try to do, being first and foremost an avid preservationist, is I try focus on making my buildings economically viable. And that's the neat thing about the Kenosha. It's been around long enough so there's been enough time to plan it and think through the process to make it economically viable. So it's not going to be a money pit where it's a drain and something that has to be subsidized, but actually will create jobs, create revenue, and actually be able to pay back what it costs to build it. And that's pretty magical, especially the way things are being done now. It's just an unbelievable opportunity whose time has really come.
The economic spin-off is going to be tremendous in this market, and there's no question about it. It's the final piece of the puzzle that we need to truly rejuvenate the downtown and all the natural advantages that we have with our waterfront location and truly complement what's been done to date to really make Kenosha a destination.
After creating jobs during the construction and restoration, the restored theater itself will create jobs from entry-level to executive director, from professional and technical. And the jobs that are created by the economic impact at the bars and restaurants will have a multiplier effect into the community as the employees spend their wages in the local economy. Then there's always the devil's advocate that says, how are we going to pay for it? When the answer is actually quite simple. We believe that we can, and we understand that we should. The estimated cost of the project, with a parking structure, is $30 million. It would certainly be a bold infrastructure development for the city to undertake. But it is less than the cost of the environmental cleanup of the former Chrysler site. But what is the cost of doing nothing? Let's put this amount in the context of other cities in the area. If we are going to compete for the next generation of jobs that require knowledge workers, we will have to supply the amenities that cities of similar size offer. so that companies will want to move their educated workforce here instead of to nearby communities that recognize that quality of life is one of the major factors in a company making its decision to relocate into a community. Let's take a look at the other communities. Appleton raised $45 million in 2003 through the private donations of over 2,700 local residents and businesses. The city decided it was going to do it, and it got it done. They didn't wring their hands and recite all of the reasons why it couldn't be done. They did it. In Green Bay, after a single large donation, they raised the remaining $18.4 million to build the Widener Center for the Arts. With the help of the University of Wisconsin Green Bay Chancellor, the community decided that they could do it, and they got it done. Their roster of the past performances reads like the who's who in the arts and entertainment world. The Overture Center for the Arts in Madison was created when former Mayor Paul Soglin had the political will and vision to dream of a performing arts center in the restored movie palace that was the Capitol Theater. In 1998, a local businessman made a breathtaking commitment to create a cultural arts district in downtown Madison. Once the political will was determined that it should be done, local businesses followed. The Genesee Theater in Waukegan was simply funded by a tax-exempt revenue bond issue that was the result of a courageous vote by that community's city council. Today, Kenosha stands at a turning point. After losing over a century of automobile manufacturing as its defining identity, the time has come for the community to decide just who and what we want to become. The Kenosha Theater business plan isn't a performing arts center that needs to be subsidized year after year. It will be an entertainment complex that welcomes the arts. The entertainment subscription model works well for theaters like nearby Drury Lane with over 24,000 subscribers and the Marriott Lincolnshire with over 40,000 subscribers. Copying the successes of hundreds of communities that have given their historic theaters new life will let businesses know that Kenosha is the place to raise a family with educational and employment opportunities for the future. We can move forward by preserving and utilizing the best of our past. What did Appleton, Green Bay, Waukegan, and Madison see that Kenosha has yet to realize? That theater celebrates imagination. When we use our imagination, we can do almost anything. Don't put the no in Kenosha. Support the Kenosha Theater Restoration Project.